Hello everyone, and welcome to today's video lesson for May 14th. Today we are going to wrap up this little section on the Psalms, and again we are continuing to identify different elements and things that just make up the wisdom literature. And so right now we're looking at the Psalms, right? And we're looking at the different ways, different ways the Psalms are structured, okay? And so we ended the other day looking at the different types of Psalms, if you remember. And today we're going to pick that back up. But before we do that, just as a reminder, please be taking notes as you watch and listen to this video. And again, listening for any instructions I might give for your participation points for today, okay? There will be a couple of things I have you do in today's video, alright? So just listen for those. Okay, so like I said, we talked about the types of Psalms, and I'm kind of breaking this up into 4 types. We looked at lament, thanks, and praise, and we're going to actually go back to that today and look at a couple examples. But before we do that, I wanted to give you the 2 other types of Psalms. Okay, so the third type of Psalm is instruction. It's, for lack of a better word, it's what we call instruction psalms. I mean, sometimes they look like sort of historical, kind of just like storytelling, and yeah, not the most not the most interesting type of psalm, but they're in there. And then there's also like wisdom psalms. They kind of read like Proverbs, but they have instruction on how to live a better life, that kind of thing, right? So that's the third type, instruction. Then the fourth is what we call liturgical, and these are more specific to the temple life of Judaism. They were used during temple celebrations, and we even will draw from these psalms in the church today. What you see is a lot of that sort of call and response kind of thing during church. It's kind of structured like a dialogue, right? There's kind of the back and forth. A lot of that is being drawn from these type of psalms. Okay. All right. Let's now kind of go back, and I do want to spend some more time on lament and thanks and praise. Instruction and liturgical, I mean, like I said, we're kind of more familiar with these 2 types, but I want to spend some more time with lament. So to do that, here is a passage from Psalm 69. So I'm not going to read this whole thing. What I would like for you to do is to pause the video, okay, and read it yourself. And what I want you to do in a private comment, okay, I want you to pick out one part. It could be like 1 line or 2 lines. Just find one part where the author is lamenting, or it might sound like a complaint. All right, so find one part where the author is lamenting / complaining. Then find another part, a second part, where the author is expressing some sort of hope, right? So, and like we talked about, this is what makes like a lament psalm. There's one part where he's kind of complaining, or he's kind of, expressing sorrow maybe. But then a second later, there's hope. Okay, so that's your first private comment. Find one part where there's a complaint, then a second part where there's hope. So if you need to pause the video, read the psalm. There's actually a second page. All right, so I'm going to go to that part now. There's 36 verses to this psalm. So if you need to pause the video, do so. Go back if you need to. But again, for this first private comment, find one part where the author complains, and then another part where he has hope. Okay? Alright, we're going to move on. Hopefully that gives you an idea, you have a good example in your head now what a lament kind of psalm is. So we're going to go back to thanks and praise, and right off the bat to this Psalm chapter 33. It's very obvious. It starts with rejoice, all right, and then the next two verses start with praise. So right off the bat, okay, this is a thanks and praise psalm. It says, "Rejoice in the Lord, O you righteous. Praise befits the upright. Praise the Lord with the lyre." And then immediately you start to see too, right? Even in the psalm, the words are talking about singing. And I had mentioned before that this type of psalm, right, is used for music, right? So they're talking about singing. They're singing about singing, right? And so that's kind of, the author's kind of describing, the sort of emotion that you feel when you have gratitude, right? You just want to sing. And that's kind of what he's doing. He wants to sing about singing. He's so, full of thanks for God. So that's thanks and praise. All right, this will be it for today to kind of end the Psalms. Here is a famous passage from the Psalms, chapter 137. Let me read it. "By the rivers at Babylon." So this should already ring a bell, Babylon. Remember, Babylonian exile, right? So this psalm was written when they were in exile in Babylon. So it reads, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept, when we remembered Zion." Zion is another name for Jerusalem. "On the willows there we hung up our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked for mirth, saying, 'Sing us one of the songs of Zion.' How could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither. Let my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they said, 'Tear it down, down to its foundations.' O daughter Babylon, you devastator, happy shall they be who pay you back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock." So, whoa, right? He's talking about dashing little ones against the rock. Kind of graphic, right? But what's he getting at? Obviously, I don't think anyone really wishes for, children to be harmed. So maybe he's kind of, exaggerating a bit. But to the first point here, and this is part what I want you to write down in your notes, these bullet points on the right. The Psalms use complete and brutal honesty. But part of that is, they're able to just be brutally honest because they trust in God. The authors do. They have this pent up anger and rage, right? And they're blaming enemies and their enemies for their problems. And if you remember, right, the prophet's message wasn't that destruction's coming because of your enemies. No, destruction's coming because you, Jerusalem, you, Israel, won't stop sinning. And so you're going to, these are the natural consequences of your own sin. This is not your enemy's fault, but your own. So even though in this psalm the author is still blaming his enemies, not taking, accountability or responsibility for his own mistakes, right? So why so blunt? It's sincere, raw emotion. It's very real. No, there's no pretense. And what we see is the authors of the Psalms, they bring their entire whole imperfect self to God, and they just lay it all out there. And there's a bit of comfort to that, right? Have you ever been just so mad and so angry you just want to yell, right? And just let it out. And after you do so, you kind of feel better, right? That's kind of what's happening here with these Psalms. So 1 minute, we see the authors, they're singing songs and they're grateful. And then the next, maybe they're lamenting. They're like, why is bad stuff happening to me? But I still trust you, God. Right? And then maybe another minute they're mad that bad stuff is happening. But they still trust God, right? They still acknowledge that God is the center of the universe. He's a creator, right? And that God still has their best interests at heart, right? But they understand that God, as creator of the world and the universe, is big enough to handle the human emotions of, anger and frustration. So it's really fascinating to see, in the Bible here, just human authors just sometimes being just brutally honest. So to wrap up today's lesson, what can we take away from the brutal honesty of the Psalms? And this is what I want you to, just think about. And for your second and final private comment for today's lesson, just answer that question for me. In your opinion, what do you take away from, seeing the brutal honesty of the authors of the Psalms? Is that comforting to you? Is it weird? Just explain how that makes you feel. And that will get you your participation points for today, and that will be it. That is all I have. Okay? So if you have any questions, again, please just reach out to me, email me, and I will talk to you later. Okay? Have a good day. Bye.